today.
Okay, let's bring in Liberal frontbencher Senator Andrew Bragg. Your thoughts on those sanctions? We obviously, you're the spokesperson for productivity. We want to talk to you about the productivity roundtable the government's announced, but this big news on sanctions against the Israeli ministers. What's your reaction to that?
Kieran, the Magnitsky-style sanctions were designed for autocrats in North Korea and Russia. They weren't designed to be used against democratically arranged governments and ministers in those states. So the government have to explain exactly why they have chosen to use these type of measures against an ally in which its government has been democratically arranged. It is not a government of autocrats.
Do you think that the Australian government is out of step with our allies? How would you characterise it, given obviously we've faced criticism from the United States, but in step with the UK, New Zealand and Canada?
Well, Australia should make its own judgments, and I think unless there is information that has not been known publicly, Australia has made a mistake here in making this judgment, because this measure, the Magnitsky measure, was not designed to be used against ministers of state of democratically elected governments. So Australia needs to make its own judgments on its own merits, and I don't see how that has been done, and we are seeking briefings from the government.
Strong supporters of Israel, including former Prime Ministers Barak and Ehud Olmert, have been very critical of the Netanyahu government and some of these ministers. If there's that sort of internal criticism, and some of it fierce, as you rightly point out, in a democracy which continues to be the only functioning democracy in that part of the world, elections due next year. The last election was 2022. But as you know, there is a flourishing and robust media and democratic debate in that country, and a lot of it is scathing towards Netanyahu.
But the Magnitsky sanctions won't be worth very much if they're used against people based on what they have said. The point of these sanctions was for those to be deployed against autocrats who have undertaken extreme human rights violations. So we don't understand exactly why the government has chosen to use this measure, and we have sought briefings, but my sense is that they have certainly done the wrong thing here.
Let's turn our attention to the productivity roundtable. You've said you don't want it to just be the big IR club, unions and big business. What do you mean by that?
Well, productivity is a major issue facing our economy. It's anemic. It's in the toilet. The government have had 3 years. They've now discovered this. And if they're going to have a meeting in Canberra, it's important that it's not just owned by big businesses and big unions. It's important that it takes a whole of economy focus, and that they look to end their war on small business, which of course historically has not been well served by big unions and big business.
What is the key here? I know it's hard to sort of drill it down into one issue, but if you've been looking at these matters for some time, and you are the shadow productivity minister, if in simple terms, what needs to happen to lift that level of productivity, as you say, that's been flatlining for way too long?
Well, we need to see more private investment, because ultimately what we see today in Australia is a enlarged state, which is crowding out the private sector. We see a very large and growing now non-market sector, which has very sluggish productivity. So the answer to the question is we need to see more investment, more private investment into a productive part of the economy. And we also want to see, as part of that, a net reduction in regulation. I think that is one measurable component part that can be tabled at this meeting or at this summit.
Do you welcome the fact that the government is putting this as a top priority in its second term? And do you think that getting the business community, unions and small business and others there, can help provide some impetus into some serious reform?
We will be productive, particularly on something like productivity, and we will be happy to participate if we are asked, because I think the Australian people would expect that all parliamentarians want to have a more productive economy, because ultimately more investment means more jobs. So, but it's up to the government to now fill in the details. So far, they've initiated 5 Productivity Commission reports. They now want to have this meeting in Canberra.
But you'd like to be invited and attend?
Well, it's up to the government. If they invite us, we will attend. And certainly we will be productive, because we understand how important it is that we have a frank and honest discussion about the productivity challenges facing the economy.
Okay, well, we await to see whether you receive the invitation, but we thank you for accepting our invitation today, Andrew Bragg.